and it's Fabulous Fridays. We're supposed to we're running Thursdays. Basically, the daily missions begins around 9 o'clock in the evening on Eastern Standard Time. If that's But now since the time went back, it starts at 8 o'clock. This server timing on the server defaults to GMT. Let's see what this is. Here's 2 times. Let's get our keys. Let's get our key first. I got the. I'm gonna drop this down. I tested the volume out. It's a little loud, so we'll do this. This should be sufficient. Drop our uh, volume down like this, so that you don't hear the commercial. That gives us better options. Swipe the warning from the notification from Samsung away. So I've got the game tools turned off, as it says in the notification. It asks me to turn them back on again, but they actually interfere with the game. They actually interfere with gameplay. So the best performance is to try to turn as much of the Bixby stuff off, including and some of these sort of these helpful programs that's designed to. There we go. That should be better. We'll see what the 2 times is. Well, this is what I was talking about before about the upgrades. The one that's the worst, that's worth the most, is the jetpack. I've got mine always at the maximum. Super sneakers is good too. Same thing with the coin magnet, and they are actually listed in order of kind of importance in terms of bringing your coins up. And so I got mine all maxed out, so nothing left to do. And if you're stuck on a mission, you can always buy your way around a mission. You don't have to land on 12 trains. 10 hoverboards, no crash. Let's see what the specifics are on that. 10 hoverboards and one run with no crash. And since it's Friday, we're getting into the weekend. Uh, I'm going to do my work early, just get out of it like that. There we go. We got hoverboards. That's how the missions end. Let's bring this back down again. We bring it down to the E, or for the I there, and we should be fine. Not hear much of the sound for the commercial. So that's the whole thing, is to get the commercials in terms of their sound out of the stream. And this is how you pay for your doubles up. This is how you pay for a lot of these different things. So uh, and it's worth it. It's, in terms of what you get, it gives me enough hoverboards and coinage that as a free player, I can work my way to the top. So let's bring the media back up again. Let's bring that to there. It's better. The last one I had is I had the volume too loud on the media, and it interfered with the discussion. So we're running our daily mission, and we're still running with Lauren. We have a pilot's outfit for her. I choose my outfits. I haven't seen that the outfits actually do anything. There's the first letter. But I buy my outfits for the characters, or buy the outfits for the characters based on you know how they look in it. If it's all right, then you get and you like it, then you get the costume. Otherwise, you leave them as they are, because it doesn't really, from my experience, anyways, it doesn't make a difference what outfit you run in terms of the overall points in the coinage. So that's kind of the way I make the assessment on the clothes. L. Mm, There's another reward. We're going for these rewards again. So that's going to be part of this daily mission is to get the award. So we could be here. There we go. We've completed the daily challenge. Now to complete the mission to get the rewards. I was supposed to do this last night. I usually do it either around 10, or between 9 and 10, or 1 and 3. Usually, if it's on the wordy weekend, you I tend to start between 1 and 3. But if it's not the wordy weekend, if it's just the daily mission, then I start to do. I try to get to it by 10 o'clock. But if this is the time I've had a flu type of thing, and knocked me out last night, so I wasn't able to get to it around 10 o'clock. Was planning for 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, but just was feeling so wrecked that and it just called the whole thing off. So I'm playing now. Oop, that didn't work. But we're gonna keep going. We've got 1 of 25. Here's our surprise box. And a surprise box gives us sometimes this time it's giving us coins, and this will give us 6,000 when we're done, doubling up. Drop our volume. And this sort of these commercials come up often. They've been trying to bring in other commercials like Home Depot and Mercedes Benz and was it Samsung as in here, but they're not too successful at it. They seem to be very buggy. So let's swipe this away and bring. There we go. That should be good enough. We got 6,000 coins from our daily double. We also picked up a regular box as well. Let's see what we get here. We're gonna get another 2,000 from that. So let's double that up. Bring our media down, media volume down once again. Do the dismiss. And dismiss is just a simple swipe to the right. And that takes care of everything. Here we go. Swipe to the right. 2,000 coins, and we are now at eight. Let's bring our volume back up to the L there. We are 831 thousand. It was 831.7K. Want to round that up, so 832. And we have to, in addition to our prize, we have to get up now. Our mission is to get up to 840. And this certainly helps us out there a lot. That's pretty good. Gonna take the picture. For Instagram, anything above 500 is worthy of a snapshot and is in comparison to the top score. So the goal is to push up the regular standard. So anything above 500 gets a note, or actually is noteworthy. So a photograph is taken, the screenshot's taken, and eventually we'll be posting these to Instagram. Yeah. Right now we're kind of behind on that. We're still rolling out, working on rolling out Cyborg out Kawaii Tea House TV. That's still in progress. We haven't completed it yet. There's still a lot of work to get done, but bit by bit, at least we're now live streaming. We got some of the editing desks on here set up. I still have to do some work on some of the other editing desks for the rest of the network. Mm, Didn't work out too well there. Only 155, and none of the emblems or the looks like the American symbol are picked up in that run. We've got one of the 25 that we need, so this is going to take a bit of time. Sit back, get a cup of coffee, and whatever you like to drink or eat. We will talk about something as we move along, but right now my mind is a little blank. I'm still waking up. Here we go. Picked up some key. Picked up a key. Keys are important for the wordy weekend, particularly if you don't have a lot of the characters, because it helps you get past some of the characters you don't have. If they're not going to give it to you for a commercial, then you pay keys for it. And if you don't have enough keys to get past some of these, the ones you don't have, the characters you don't have, then that's the end of your wordy weekend. So the key to having a good length in terms of the wordy weekend, that a good run, you need these keys to pay for that. You also the outfit the outfits cost keys. So far, so good. 706 coins. That's not bad. Another photograph, and we continue running again. I won't be using the score boosters at the beginning there until the weekend, till basically Sunday. and then I simply used them to get onto the leaderboard just to get up to the bronze area. There was about 200,000, and the rest of the time I will be running without the score boosters to the rest of the rest of the leaderboard, back hopefully back up into gold. So watch out for the end of the shoes, because with the shoes you can bounce and jump around. Without the shoes you can't do that, and so you think, okay, I'm going to be able to jump over train, and just as the shoes die off, it drops you in the middle of your jump, and you end up hitting the train. So you gotta be aware of, if you can, somewhat aware of when the shoes turn off, when these different features turn off that you pick up, because it will cause you to crash. And this is what happens. You notice we haven't seen any of the emblems up so far. So we are doing the emblem run, but we haven't seen them, and this is what sort of adds to the time. Is if you don't have the emblems up, if they're not placed anywhere, then you can't get them, and it adds to the time that you end up running your missions. So get more of these shoes. These shoes are more than worth it. You try to pick them up as you can, but as you notice, as the as it goes on, it goes faster and faster. So we got a good run again. 867. And this is what we're looking for. We're looking to make these runs, the 700s, the 800s, uh, the standard or consistent run. That's the standard we're aiming for. And the thing is, this is how you start building yourself up on the leaderboard. Here we go. We got our second emblem. At 12, we're just about halfway there. And that's because you can't get a 12.5, which is the actual halfway. So it'll either be just below the 50% mark at 12, and just above the 50% mark at 13. Another gesture glitch. Did the gesture to move over to get the emblem, and didn't work. There goes the shoes. We're back regular again. There goes another shoe. Pick up. We picked up another emblem, so we're at 3 emblems now. Shoe didn't pick up. Three head starts. We're gonna double that up. Drop our volume again because we don't want to hear the sounds in the media. Yeah, photo editors. Mm, mm. Let's bring our volume back up for the media. We got six head starts. Of course, at this point in time, right now, 300. We used to photograph the 300. Now we're not going to do the 300, even though it's into the bronze. Bronze down here is there. You go. There's bronze there. That's 172. 60 is into bronze. That's the beginning. There's your silver right there. Here's the gold. I'm at the top of the gold, and then above the above the million market, it is looks like 1.5 is the entry into diamond. So we have a bit of ways to go to make that a consistent run. And that's the whole thing is you want to make your runs consistent. So if you get gold once or twice and that's it, and never get gold again, then that's a fluke. You sort of got lucky that time. If you can get gold week after week on a regular basis, then that's not luck. It's something that's consistent. And unfortunately, I used to when I used to do the runs like this, I used to have music in the background, but not going to do that anymore because this does go up on YouTube. You can watch this on demand, the live stream. So even if you miss this live stream, you can pick it up on live, on demand. And I will not be on the like a lot of players I notice uh, actually put backgrounds and they edit the live stream. So when you go back and see it, it's not the same as it was initially. I'm not going to do that. This is the way I'm doing it. I'm streaming. Oop, not bad. Well, the 350. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave the gameplay unmodified. I haven't found a way yet to put in the background when you're playing on Android. This is actually being streamed from the Android, so this is actually a mobile stream, and it's being done at 1080p, and that's why you only see the middle part of the screen there because it's being played in portrait. So yeah, 1080p, 60 frames a second, so nice high quality. Twitch is working all right. We've got the sound somewhat somewhat figured out. We'll see how this ends up working out when we play this back on the shorter broadcast. There's the background media sound. Usually in the longer broadcast so far, there hasn't been the media sound, this sort of the clinking of coins, and that hasn't been there. Uh, I lost my train of thought there for a minute as to where we were in the game, and of course that results in a crash. A drifting of the mind is a mindlessness causes crashes, and this is definitely a game uh, based on alertness and quick reaction. And with this, you can actually see how impairment from anything, we call impaired driving, Anything that impairs you will produce accidents. So it doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're drunk or you've had too much to ironically enough drink, because they're assuming that the drink you're drinking something so-called alcoholic. Like could be drinking soda or juice or milk. Can't drive. I've had too much milk to drink. Saw it, but was too late to do anything about it. There's the super shoes. I have the bouncer board. I could have gone up there with the bouncer board and get it, but sometimes your reaction to that when you see it isn't quick enough, and it ends up you end up dying. So I've been talking about gambling before in terms of I couldn't remember, I get the wrong term about the slot machines. I call them called the jackpot machines, but they weren't. They operate the slot machines with the three vertical wheels, or sometimes four vertical wheels that show you pictures, and it spins. And if you get four matches or three matches or however they set it up, you win something. Well, they've got games now based on these sort of wheels, these sort of gambling wheels. Now, I've played with the games called Coin Master and didn't feel the game was actually worth it because after you got to a certain point, well, before you got to a certain point, you could see that the game was rigged. That you could, if you wanted something, they gave you rewards to keep you playing, and you could see the wheel, which would normally spin randomly, and all of a sudden it get to a point where something you'd want, and instead of continuing on with its regular speed or whatever it is, it just automatically stops at the good thing. You go, oh yay, I won, I won, I won. But what happens is that as you get higher, higher, higher up in the game, and if you haven't paid anything, if you've just been trying to do a free player thing, the way I do, what it ends up doing is stopping uh, away from the good things that are on the wheel, from the prizes. It gives you not so good things. And so that at a certain point in time, if you haven't paid, instead of gaining ground and moving up, you begin to lose ground. And it's all because you haven't paid. So in a game like Coin Mass and these jackpots, the wheels are rigged, and this is the way it is even in the casino. And it's not that difficult to actually rig a game. Let's take something like a blackjack. In mathematics, you could theoretically count the cards because there's 52 cards. Of the 52 cards, 13 cards are of one suit, particularly jacks, clubs, hearts, spades. Right, so there are four suits, 13 cards produces produces your 52 cards. And so what happens, as long as you've got 52 cards there, your odds remain within that 52 that span of 52. The total sample size isn't larger than that. So calculating the odds of getting one particular cards or not is not that difficult. However, if you start adding decks of cards to that 52, the odds double, triple, depending on the number of decks you add to it. Because the sample size that you're dealing with gets larger. And so in the casinos, when they have this rack of cards, they have this whole thing like a convenient tray that they pull out of a thing, and they always keep adding new opening new packets of cards and adding new decks to it as they feel they need to. Even though they shuffle the cards, right, which is supposed to be a thing of randomness, to add some randomness to it. So the cards aren't predictable; they're not in a row; they're a little more difficult to count. Even though that's done, when you add the shuffled cards to it, and let's say you have 40 or 50, and these things are large, so they could have 40 or 50 decks lined up together. Shuffled, it's impossible to, if let's say you have 10 decks all lined up together, right? Then your R's aren't simply within the 52 um, sample size. Our R's now, if we have 10 decks, are now it's out of, the sample size is uh, 520, right? 52 times 10 in terms of doing our calculation. And so the odds, if you sit down and do the calculations, the combinations of permutations, that's your statistic, you begin to see that the odds definitely go in the favor of the house. That's what the house does. The house prevents you from cheating, but the house is perfectly allowed to cheat and take money from you. So uh, these games are more often than not skewed, and the jackpots that they win are a small that people, when you see the people win it, the people they're winning. Well, no, they're winning only a controlled small percentage of what the casino actually takes in, and they know that people, when they win these jackpots, more from that will go out and re-gamble with a jackpot, either losing the entire jackpot, the winnings altogether, or losing part of it. So in other words, they can claw back a lot of their costs to paying out a jackpot simply by having the casino open and giving these people free gifts and something like that, to keep them in the casino, to keep them gambling. Now, however, it's still possible if you are astute enough and you can do a significant amount of observation. It's still possible to sit down and calculate or figure out uh, with these decks of cards. Let's say a 10 deck card, 10 decks of cards. It's still possible. We're at 37,000. We were 3,000 away from our goal in terms of our financial or coin goal or financial goal. It's still possible to determine a pattern, because what happens in things that this is the way physics is you have something called pattern behavior, it's impossible to truly make the cards random. Things will tend to, in physics, lump up. And if you can determine what that lump is, where these different lumps are different, particularly when they focus on the called the face cards, the Jack, Queen, King, and Ace, then these will have a lumping effect. They are identifiable, and you can sit down and sort of calculate the odds when the best time to play is, when is going to be your best time to sort of get these so-called winning hands. that can be done. But of course, uh, there's all forms of surveillance out there, so they go to great lengths to prevent people from actually doing that, to do the observations, and you know, you can't take notes. There's no way of taking physical notes. That's illegal. Cheating on the house is verboten, and will get you arrested. Because don't forget now, the states are involved in gambling. The government's involved in gambling. They've become organized crimes themselves, and they want a slice of the pie. So you know, they provide all the law enforcement necessary to keep their profits healthy. Because how dare you take the money from the government? They own it. It's their money, and you owe it to them. You're their slave. It's a kind of a reversal of the civil servant. They call themselves civil servants, but they're not actually civil servants by definition, by function. They're actually the overlords and slave masters. We got up to our 510. Double this up. We'll get 1,000 out of it. Drop our volume. There we go. Swipe this to the side. Yeah, businesses have governments have got into the organized crime racket. They are now more and more like organized crime, and of course they move to protect themselves. And this is what we saw with the FBI during the Comey investigation, so on and so forth, into Hillary Clinton. Everybody knew what was going on. Everyone knew, I mean, this whole thing. Oh, it was Russia who hacked. Yeah, really? Talk to any Bernie Sanders supporter and ask them what happened during the during the Bernie Sanders the Democratic primary. Ask them what happened to Bernie Sanders. But like everything else, these people, Jill Stein, Bernie Sanders, they all rolled over. They all played nice. They all sort of, recognized the establishment, recognized the machine, and because they all had gains and benefits inside of the game itself, inside the establishment, uh, they chose their own self-interest in order over the interests of the general public. And then this is how much the ideology of socialism is worth. You talk about the social justice warriors, bring them into the picture now. They're primarily selfish. It has nothing to do with actually helping people. It's more about having a good time, and this is your college years. You get to be a little wild to join a protest, and be all politically correct, and you're in with a group, and you're inclusive, and so on and so forth. But you're not really inclusive, because as soon as someone disagrees with you, doesn't think the way you think, uh, these people are dangerous. Their thoughts are dangerous, and they need to be eliminated. This is the inclusiveness of the social justice warrior. And we saw that in space during the Trump election, which in many ways was not necessarily a Republican victory. I mean, I wouldn't call the Trump election a Republican victory at all. I mean, the Republicans are still fighting tooth and nail against Trump. There's a huge battle going on between Trump and the Republican Party. And that's because most of the Republican Party now has been sort of, they're part of the machine. They understand where the things are at, and they don't want their machine upset. And as that occurs, and they see their bread and butter, we're at the 40. We're at the 40,000, but we're not at the coin point to. We're not at the. We got 7 of the 25, so we're gonna go fully for the 25. Let's see how long that takes now. I should pay closer attention to the time for it because I don't know. I'll end up splitting it up later on if it's too large for YouTube, but um, don't think so. Because what I've done now is instead of transfer exporting from Twitch to YouTube, I simply download and then upload to YouTube, and that's a much better option. So we got a special box there that actually these are our special surprise boxes. They're uh, surprise boxes are coming normal and special. I decided to go from cause right now we've got the coinage that we not so forego the jetpack, get the emblem. That was a priority, and that's what you have to pay attention for. You have to pay attention to make sure that you're seeing everything, and you've only got a split second, or not even a fraction of a second, to make a decision as to where you're going to go. Yeah, this whole Trump election, going back to that whole issue there, was for me quite interesting. We've got the 9 of the 25. Double that up. Drop our media volume. Nope, nope. That's a swipe error. Yeah, so this election was quite interesting, and from the point I was watching people, anchors, and the whole bit, really cry and freak out on the air. So we're not quite to the halfway point yet. So let's get. And I said it wasn't specifically a win for the Republicans. What it was, because Donald Trump really seems to be his own person. This was a win for the individualist. There are people like myself out there. We are individualists. We don't belong, or they call them independents. We don't belong to a party. We don't follow group ideology. We don't. I'm not a feminist. I'm not a guyist. I'm not a this or that. I'm not a Republican or I'm not a conservative or I am what I am, and that's about it. That's the way I put it. I sit down, I study things, I do the research. Then I'm a nerd. I'm a physicist and a quantum. I'm a quantum physicist and a cyberneticist. That's what I've been doing for most of my life. And I tend to go towards the bizarre and unusual. Just because someone tells me, "Oh, don't look at that. Don't read this. Don't read that. Don't look at this. Don't look at that," doesn't mean that I'm not going to look at it. I'm actually, I know from experience that if you tell me not to look at something, that there is probably something there that I'm going to be interested in. And so that's going to make me all the more determined to, okay, well, since you pointed out this is the thing I shouldn't be looking at, well, when you're not around, I'm going to, do my best to try to take a look at it. There is no better incentive to do something than to say, oh, you can't do that. And that's where I get into a lot of my problems is that I am open minded in terms of really being a free thinker. It's not simply an act or a status symbol. There are a lot of people out there who, for them, that free thinking is a status symbol. You go into a group and uh, they all call themselves free thinkers. You get into a discussion with them, also they're not free thinkers. You have to think the way they think. They're social justice warriors. And as soon as you present something that's somewhat controversial because it disagrees with what their sense should be, But their free thought should be, uh, all of a sudden you're the enemy of the state and you need to be gotten rid of. And they get very angry, they get very upset, very defensive. And this is where you get, this is how I got banned from Facebook. I got banned from Facebook not for being offensive, but for contradicting in a free thinker group the standard thought that was going on. And it was just a matter of pointing out these pointing out some of the inconsistencies in their ideology, got them so bent out of shape that they couldn't tell that you were simply sort of just providing an argument to their argument, sort of a counter argument. Got so offended they reported it as if, and these special bags are worth getting. See, here we go. These special, particularly the gold ones that sparkle like that. This is where you get your coinage. You can move it much quicker than you intend to. So this is going to give us an extra 10,000, which means now we're more than likely heading towards 90,000 as our endpoint going into Wordy Weekend. Yeah, but there's it. These free thinkers that I've sort of seen and talked to. No, I don't know how to get that away. But anyways, let's bring the volume back up again to below the star there. There we go. Um, yeah. So these free thinkers that call themselves free thinkers, they're not free thinkers. They're basically your standard wacko. And most people don't want to be told the truth. Most people prefer their lies. They prefer the fiction that they see on TV as news. That's what they want. They don't want to be really thinking for themselves. They want to be told by a government. We're at 11 now. We're almost to that halfway point. The bizarre, the somewhat halfway point. And it doesn't matter how often they find themselves in a situation where they're being led by their noses by the media. Every time they're correct and go, "Oh man, that was completely false," or "That was not," and it's because the media leaves out information. They leave out bits and pieces that are important, extremely important to understand what's actually going on. So, in other words, they give you a false perspective, and they do that by providing not all the information, but some of the information fed to you in such a way that it creates a perception as to what's actually going on. And it's not the reality of what's going on, but a perception of the reality. So you're seeing a perception, you're seeing a particular view. Even though they say, "Oh, we're not biased, we're simply reporting the facts." And they're not. They're not reporting the facts. What they're doing is giving you a very limited selection of the so-called facts, enough so that the picture that they paint is seen in your mind, and that's it. And of course, they sort of give themselves an air of an authority. They have the deep voices. They have these very serious looks. They're all dressed in uh, business attire. And they have this again. It's a persona. It's a sort of you call it cachet, a swag that they have authority. And this is what police do as well. The police don't necessarily. A lot of times, the police don't know because in many cases they're too young to know or have any real experience with the law, knowing the actual law itself, in terms of understanding the legal aspects of the law, right? They know what they're supposed to enforce, and they're given specific. They're trained specifically to, to know what to enforce, and their enforcement though is based on intimidation and authority. It's not actually based on law. So what happens when a cop enforces the law? They're not enforcing the legal law. They're enforcing their own sense of authority. They're creating a situation of authority and submission. And this is standard training. This has been going on for a long time. This is a good run. We were at 1,100. And this has been known for a long time to be a serious problem. I mean, they've been doing studies since the 1950s on the situation of authority and submission. This was done by Stanley Milgram, actually. And this is if you hear conspiracy theorists talk about MK Ultra, they won't give you the details of Stanley Milgram. And the thing is that a lot of these so-called psychological tests, which were supposed to be benign and non-threatening, uh, could have been used, weaponized, and used as part of a means to. Let me see where this is now. Okay, right before the start. Take the picture, and we're now up to 86,000, 860,000. They're not going to give the details of the actual report. They're not going to go into the specifics of the psychology. They'll simply talk about MK Ultra. That's the conspiracy theorists. And that's what cases, most cases, the conspiracy theorists will never get into the actual details. They won't get into the physics of things. They won't show you the physics of what happened in 9/11. They'll simply say, "Oh, that's thermite," or "This is that," without getting into much of the details, and they simply talk about conspiracy. But a conspiracy, in turn, it doesn't have to be everybody reading from a script. Conspiracy can be a lot more complex than that. There are varieties of ways of sort of meeting out a conspiracy where not everybody is on the same page. And there's a degree of uncertainty. There's a degree of uncertainty in the conspiracy. So you don't really know if what you're planning to do is going to work out or not. And that's what happens, even with 9/11, even though well, I'm going to say it was conspiracy, and there's a lot of evidence for conspiracy. It looks more like what we call an ad hoc conspiracy, where they simply created an event, understanding that any outcome from this event is better than no outcome from a non-event. And that's as far as the planning goes, and that's as specific as it gets, right? You create an event to create an outcome. In a loose conspiracy or disorganized conspiracy, the ad hoc conspiracy, the goal is any outcome from the event that you conspire to create is better than no outcome, right? And that's the situation with 9/11. It didn't matter the specifics that was gotten out of the 9/11 event. What it mattered was the 9/11 event occurred, and then you could reap and sow uh, whatever you wanted to from the results of that event, no matter what it was. In other words, everything was viewed outside of the event of 9/11 as being positive. Give you a case here. Hollywood in the 1990s started getting involved with politics. Everybody's seen that. Everyone has seen that Hollywood was getting involved. Not only did you have Oprah getting involved, you had George Clooney. There's a whole bunch of A-list stars that really got involved uh, in politics. So one could see that the benefits of 9/11 creating enough of a media storm that they're always going to be in a situation where it's a positive thing. Give me an example. If you're a news show, a news outlet like CNN, the events of 9/11 put them on the map. They received their highest ratings and made their most amount of money out of 9/11. 9/11 was a boon for them. They made huge swabs of cash because their ratings went up. And they did. And there's a lot of people, even psychologists know this, had to tell people stop watching CNN because what they were doing is they were looping the events of the planes crashing into the building, causing anxiety over and over and over again. And that's all they did is they kept looping. Then they had these experts on. So think of this: all those experts on CNN. Anytime you see an expert on CNN or any of these news channels, they're paid to be there. They're making money. So if you have an event and these people are discussing something, whether it's a war or whatever, they're making money off this war. They're making money off these events. And because these events are portrayed to people as important and something to be newsworthy, people watch. And the more gory it is, this is the way for blood sports and even with hockey, and all the sports, fights are great. You want to see a fight? Watch hockey. You know, hockey, you get a not only do you get a sport, you get a ball sport, but you also get boxing. You get a fist fight. You get mixed martial arts. You get street fighting every game. And the thing is that it's well known in hockey that you will have people on the team added to the team not because they're great players, but because they're bruisers. So it's not out of the realm that you have these large media companies which are all involved with the CIA, like NBC, ABC, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, all the Washington Post. They're all involved with the CIA. They have been since the beginning. This isn't something new. So you can't see these guys going around saying, "Oh, let's create an event here. Let's create a 9/11 type event and reap the rewards, the profits." You can see because the news is, if it bleeds, it leads. Then that's what they're gonna do. We are 14 now. We are more than halfway. We have 10 left to go. Ugh. And so it becomes within the realm of possibility if you know the history of where the news comes from and the amount of money that they make. And we just got bring up this surfboard here. Oh, the surfboard keeps us alive, but it helped us get extra the extra emblem, so we're not 15. Basically, your understanding of events is based on probability. What is the likelihood that this is actually created by somebody for some particular purpose? And the thing is, you can see with the media companies, and this is because there's been a history of this, of the media creating its own news, creating disasters to create its own news. This is what happened with Ruby Ridge. This is what happened with Waco. Both Waco and Ruby Ridge were started by false uh, newspaper reports, false articles. that led the police to believe that these groups were planning a war against America, that they were going to planning to attack, and that they were on the fully armed and ready to go. And these stories were primarily fabricated. A lot of what was said to be going on wasn't going on. But the FBI took this as their opportunity, and this was again under these social justice wars who supposed to be tolerant, but they're intolerant of anyone who's religious on the right. You know, oh, he's religious, he must be a nutcase. Not that there aren't religious nutcases out there. It just what happens is if you're supposed to be tolerant, then you're tolerant of everything, not just simply of your own ideas. That's being tolerant of your own ideas is exactly the same thing that the Republicans do. Yeah, I'm tolerant. I'm tolerant of my own ideas. As long as you think the way I think, then that's okay. If you don't think the way I think, then no, we got a problem. That's on both the left and the right. If you're a free thinker, then that's kind of not for you. And so you can see that understanding what the media has done in the past to create their own stories, that you can actually see the heads of CNN, these large corporate masters working with the government, uh, creating an event so that the government gets something out of it. Got the super box, and the newspapers, the corporations who run the newspapers get something out of it. They get their advertising dollar. And so you can see a loose conspiracy coming together where the outcome doesn't matter as long as the outcome occurs. As long as the 9/11 event occurs, they don't care what happens. They're going to benefit from it regardless of the actual total outcome. And that's what happened. The news outlets and a lot of the government, this includes the TSA, the unions, and all these different people, huge benefits. Huge benefits from 9/11. They're all cleaning up. They're all making money. The corporations who sell the security equipment, the security companies themselves, because a lot of these companies are private, right? These private contractors who were in Iraq, these so-called uh, private contractors, they're actually private armies. These are the militias you're talking about in the Second Amendment. And that's what the Second Amendment is about. The Second Amendment is not about simply hunting. The Second Amendment is about creating your own militia, creating your own army, so that you can fight wars. I mean, people when we talk about the Second Amendment, the whole thing with NRA, it has nothing to do with hunting. And I'm pretty sure the NRA understands that this is not a hunting issue. This is a military issue. This is taking the guns out of the hands of revolutionaries, like our revolutionary founders, like the founding fathers of the United States, who were themselves revolutionaries, and making sure that government control is complete. That's what this is about. And the thing is all you have to do is go into history to understand this. That this is not a new battle. This is something that's old, and this is how you fight. End up in a fight for your freedom. And for those of you who are commenting, thank you for your comments. I'm on an Android phone. There's no way to pull up the comments, so I can't actually see the comments themselves, nor can I reply to the comments. What I hope to do is I can go on to, when I get onto the Twitch platform, if I can see your comment there, then what will happen is I will then reply if I can. If I can't reply in the comment section itself, I will reply in the next live stream. Anyways, let's see where this is going here now. Yeah, so the Second Amendment was never really intended to be simply about hunting. It was about this whole revolution, and this is where the United States now, instead of going out to a regular army, goes out to these contractors. And this is the same situation with the TSA. And of course, what happens, a lot of union people don't understand this. There is no real fight between corporations and unions. In order for a union to exist, it needs large multinational corporations. So there is a trifecta there. In order for the union to exist, they need a government that is big government, that is like the Democrats. The Democrats, in order to get elected, because they need to have the backs of the unions, needs large corporations, the multinational corporations, to provide the jobs that union employees can take. This is why things like GM, Chrysler, all these big car companies, all these big multinationals, why do they get away with what they get away with, including these levels of pollution? Simple. Because the unions and the governments are all in bed with each other. They're all working together to create the job. And the thing is, of course, you need to understand that the politicians, like Clinton, oh, she's getting paid off by the big corporation. Of course, she's getting paid off by the big corporation because she's getting her share of the profits that were made when she opened the doors for large corporations to come in, and they squelch competition. No, that was a bad move there. Is this comment thing here? I can't seem to get there. We go. Now that's gone. The comment thing was causing problems with the gestures, interfering with the gestures, not gestures. Jesters are the clowns and people that made kings laugh in the medieval times. The personal entertainers for the kings and queens. They were your stand-up comedians of the time. Think of Jay Leno in a costume, a sort of a harlequin costume, and there's the gesture for you. Um, so yeah, a lot of these people like Bernie Sanders, the social justice warrior, talk about how bad corporations are. Without the corporations, there are no jobs, and there's no money to pay for anything, and the corporations know this, so they know it's a good idea to elect people like Clinton, who are greedy enough to talk about their ideology, which will not get anywhere, will not be useful at all, unless they have backing from these large corporations. Missed that emblem there. And so they're all more or less on the same page. They all come out of Yale. They all come out of these top schools. They all know each other. They all go to the same dining clubs, same bars. And for them, all that goes on, Pizzagate and everything else, all this nastiness is part of the business. It's part of the game. And of course, like any sports fanatic, there are always people who take things way too far, like Clinton. There's the whole thing with the reality and the news, and that people prefer fiction to reality. I'm talking about Bernie Sanders supporters who promptly forgot what happened to Bernie Sanders and said, "Oh, this was the Russians doing it." Really? You had the entire primary where the Bernie Sanders were screaming and ratting out Clinton in terms of the amount of what she was doing in terms of rigging votes and rigging the primaries. And all of a sudden, it becomes the Russians who did this when Trump is elected by surprise. I mean, the thing is, they thought that the social justice wars were enough to go vote, that everybody had been swallowing the stuff that was being served on TV enough that It didn't matter what Clinton did. And that's the way it is actually here in Canada. I'm an American, but I'm living in Canada. Uh, it doesn't matter what the Democrats do. I mean, they had a senator, so-called senator in Canada, which are basically nothing positions, anyways. Uh, a conservative senator, and everyone was freaking out. He spent $90,000. They were misappropriating it, so they were, took him to court. They had an inquiry, was lasted a couple years, and it actually cost them. The inquiry would have cost at least $500 million, anyways, in government funds to find out what happened to $90,000 in the standard liberal government. Billions go missing. There was a whole issue in the Ontario election with Kathleen Wynne about the gas plants, which, on a conservative estimate, they said would have cost the taxpayers $2 billion in terms of waste and bribes. Yet, for all of that she's done, she ended up getting reelected when these landslide victories that looked a lot like the Clinton election. This in terms of the Clinton primary, and ironically enough, same thing with Macron in France. Looked a lot like a lot of these, and same thing with England, where you have these landslide victories for Labour, who got back into after Brexit. This vote rigging, these elections look a lot like the vote rigging that Clinton did. A lot like that, and Clinton was the establishment. In all these cases, this is where the establishment won. The establishment isn't the politician. People trying to understand. Oh, it was just Kathleen Wynne. No, it's not just Kathleen Wynne. It's the party. They're part of the establishment, and this is the way they operate. So what you got to understand is that it's not Democrat Republican. It's establishment versus independent. That's the actual dichotomy here. And when you understand that Hollywood is part of the establishment, and that the media is part of the establishment as well, they have this sort of symbiotic relationship. Then, when you look at sort of the outcome, the sort of the conspiratorial outcome of 9/11, and see that it's an ad hoc event, it didn't matter what the specific outcome of 9/11 was. Uh, Everybody who has benefited from this, who made money from 9/11, didn't need a specific outcome. They just simply needed 9/11 to occur. And that's what we talk about ad hoc conspiracy. This is what most conspiracy theories never talk about. They never talk about the ad hoc conspiracy where it doesn't matter what the outcome is. In other words, there's a large chunk of that's not planned because they have no intention of planning everything to the last detail because they don't need the details there. They simply need the event to occur. And no matter what happens on the other side of the event, they'll clean up, they'll make money from it. And I said, this is your security firms, these are your media firms, these are the politicians who get elected on this stuff, who are able to get reelected or bring in more campaign funds, and so on and so forth. Take a look at everybody, all the politicians, all the businesses, uh, everyone who benefited from 9/11. This includes the military, the soldiers, uh, the unions. Look at everybody who benefited from these different events. And these are your suspects, and they could be one or two who did this, or they all could have been involved. Understanding that all you need is an ad hoc event without the specifics of the outcome, in order for them to make money. Ugh. We've got 17 of the emblems. We need 3 more for 20. You need 8 more. But people are people, and most people prefer the news. I watch people who I go out to houses every now and again for dinners and so on and so forth, and listen to the discussion. I don't really say much of anything sometimes. I used to say things, but I don't say anything much anymore. More, I just sort of sit there and, eh. Some people you can talk to, but most people you can't. There's really simply nothing to be said because they're so locked into the establishment narrative that it doesn't matter what you actually say. We've got our 18 now. They're simply going to believe the establishment narrative coming out of the media, and they're not going to believe anything else. Well, they really don't want to believe anything else. They don't want to hear anything else, particularly because if what they're hearing from the mainstream media allies with uh, what their actual thoughts are, their how should I say this? Their social preferences, if you will, which are basically ideological preferences. If the media, what's just being said in the media, aligns with what you're saying, then you're not going to contradict that because it's now supporting your views. It's only when the media, the so-called official media, starts to become contrary to your particular views and thought. That's when you start getting upset. Oh, this news broadcast is all fake and blah 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 blah. And you can see it then, but it never dawns on them that the media is fake a lot of the times, not simply on your particular issues. And that's how they sell papers. They know this. How many people watch wrestling and enjoy wrestling? It's a huge industry. Wrestling, large number of fans. It's fake. It's scripted, and yet what we hear is more and more and more. Same thing with the news. There were people, analysts, pundits, couldn't figure out why CNN, Washington Post, and all these different things all jumping on this the Trump issue. And it was one simple thing: they were selling papers. It sold. It was entertaining enough, and still is entertaining enough, that it sells newspapers. Most people don't want to hear the truth. Most people don't want to know what the reality is. They want to know what they want to have their ideas, their views, their thoughts affirmed and trumpeted. So most people, even though they will claim themselves to be free thinkers, aren't. The free thinker is a rarity. Uh, More often than not, if you're the average standard person, this is the person who's insulting at the table. How dare he say that? How dare? Well, this is where we're getting into another political issue again. This whole gender, the pronoun. Oh, he's being gender biased. He's using the pronoun he. Well, no. Apparently, these people at Oxford are so stupid. This is what happens with socialism. Socialism creates this moron who is supposedly educated enough to be a professor. It was Coin Master. That was the one I was talking about with the slot machine. Creates these morons, and moron is an actual term. A moron is not a person who is, well, even stupid is a term. Same thing with the idiot is a real term. They're actually terms created by. Well, we're at the 20 mark. We've got 5 left to go. idiots, morons, feeble-minded. These are all stupid. Are all social terms uh, created by progressives uh, in psychology, trying to describe people who were, well, fundamentally what they viewed as incompetent. This comes out of the 1930s and before, when they were trying to figure out, well, why were people mentally retarded. And they said, well, these people, they have these morons. The morons were high functioning morons. They were and they were also called high functioning imbeciles. Imbecile was one of them as well. These were medical terms. And if you were classified as such of these things, and most of the workers at that time were classified as imbeciles, morons, and so on and so forth, that, well, yes, you could function and do work, but in order to do the daily living, to have your own life, and you couldn't have your own place. You had to be living in an apartment. You had to have somebody taking care of your finances. And that's what, if you were a moron, this is what happened with the Three Stooges. People say, well, why didn't the Three Stooges, who were classified as morons, that's why they were belonged to the union, the moron union, local. I think it was the three and 4/5 or something like that. They always had that fraction there. It was basically 3, 4, 5. Um, the reason why they couldn't get a job is that it was outlawed. Morons could not sign contracts. They could not have bank accounts. They couldn't lease apartments. They couldn't sign apartment agreements. That's why, in many cases, you see the X on the contract. That's what they did. They signed an X. They couldn't sign their name. They could cross things out like an X, but they couldn't sign their own. They couldn't write and print their own name. They were functionally illiterate. I mean, they could understand certain things. They couldn't really read. And ironically enough, the schools that were around at the time, call them schools, uh, assign these people to these institutions, and this is where you have Michael Myers and all these different horror stories coming out that come out of these insane asylums. Well, a lot of the people in there were not necessarily insane. They were morons. They were people who put in there uh, for no other reason that they simply didn't meet a societal standard, and the society that was looking at them, the intellectuals at the time, gave them these classifications of moron, imbecile, and decided that they could not live in normal society and had to be put away for their own good. Of course, these high functioning morons, these high functioning idiots and imbeciles, they were allowed to roam free. They weren't, but you couldn't get a job. You couldn't have a bank account. That meant, of course, if you didn't have a job, you couldn't sign a contract. You couldn't get uh, have a bank account. Everything was in cash, and you could only go to places and rent an apartment if the landlord took cash. Anything more than cash, no, couldn't do it. And so these people were always in rooming houses, boarding houses, and almost perpetually out of money. And this is what you saw with the Three Stooges. And they sort of made a comedy out of it. Most people say, "Oh, that's so stupid," and this is called guy humor with slapstick. Always hitting it, But the thing is that these people, like the Three Stooges, in terms of the Three Stooges were portraying, actually existed. It was actually a satire compared that was sort of poking fun at the situation that was going on in society. But what happens is that if you restrict your thinking, and that's actually what ignorance is. Ignorance is a restricted thought, where you will not allow yourself, you will deny anything, any form of contradiction to your own reality. That's ignorance. Ignorance is not what you don't know. Ignorance is what you will not know, what you refuse to know, what you refuse to. It is denial itself. And what happens, ignorance over a period of time creates this whole situation of where now the person's a moron. It's not a moron, but they're a moron because they couldn't have learned things. There wasn't any problem in terms of their learning capacity. It's their own restrictions, their own ignorance that puts them in the situation of being a moron. And this is what happens with professors and the whole other these people, these intellectuals who are supposed to be so intelligent, yet they follow these lines. They don't even understand that they're being led uh, by their noses to a conclusion that is dictated by somebody else who is higher up, these so-called puppet masters. And so you have this whole thing, this transgender thing, they're doing these gender studies and so on and so forth. And the issue is, what terms do you use now? Well, they have now, oh, we're going to use the term Z because he is, of course, masculine, was their argument. And therefore, if you use the term he, you're being gendered biased. And, well, unfortunately, all you have to do is go into a older dictionary and see that, I missed one of the symbols there, and see that the term he is also the pronoun for the species man, not the gender. Man, the species, not the gender. Once you talk about man, the species, and not the gender, you're now gender neutral. This is what you have in other languages. You have in a lot of like French and stuff like that, even Greek, and you have the part of the grammar is you have the masculine, the feminine, and the neuter. The neuter it is non-gender specific. So when you talk about the pronoun he, because he refers to the species of man, he is non-gender specific. It's a neutered term. It is the gender neutral term for for a pronoun. This was completely missed by the so-called Oxford scholars who created the term Z, which ironically enough, you can find in German as the. So instead of he man, the man, so it's Z man, in German Z man. Oh, yes, that's right, Z man. Right? Z man, instead of he man, is in control. Right? The man. Z man is in control. Z went to the store. The went to the store. And of course, I'm pretty sure they're going to add more of the German in there eventually, like Z Heil, right? The Führer, right? President's going to replace with the Führer as the new ultra Europe takes hold, which is really Deutsche World. And of course, the new Führer is going to be Angela Merkel. So it's going to be Sie Heil, Angela Merkel, the Führer. And we were walking ourselves right back into the Nazi realm again. Well, we got 22. And that's our goal right now. Is we're trying to get those emblems. So we've got 3 left to go, and then our conversation is over for now. And of course, you can always pick this up on YouTube or Twitch video on demand. Yeah, the whole transgender thing is an indication of where the socialist justice where this is where the establishment is going, creating these basically a moron society that can be they think can be easily controlled. A lot of this stuff, a lot of this sort of fake stuff is coming out in science, where you have global warming, so-called climate change, and where carbon dioxide is a pollutant. But carbon dioxide isn't even a greenhouse gas. A greenhouse gas is based on the gases within the greenhouse that create the temperatures in the greenhouse. And the primary and almost singular greenhouse gas in a greenhouse is water vapor. Yes, it's water itself. The second largest concentration of gas in a greenhouse is oxygen, because in a greenhouse, which is designed for plants, what ends up happening is, if you know your plant biology, is that plants don't breathe oxygen. They breathe carbon dioxide and exhale oxygen, air, what we consider breathable air. So as the plants exhale, they'll take in the carbon, put out the oxygen. So you'll actually have an abundance of oxygen in the greenhouse, and so they, in many cases, they have to vent that. The oxygen is vented to the outside, and the conditions for the greenhouse are basically water vapor. This is what creates your heat. Your heat is basically water vapor. They're not. Oh, just jump that one. Oh, oh. So technically speaking, even though molecularly speaking, you do have a reaction to heat with carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide functionally isn't a greenhouse gas. And if you go to a party and see these ice machines that produce clouds on the floor, these are not the fog machines. The fog machines create a foggy mist. A cloud machine creates these pillowy clouds on the floor. The pillowy clouds on the floor are dry ice. It's carbon dioxide. So anytime you see those fog machines, you see that pillowy effect on the floor that gives you this nice sort of ooh. These weddings that they're walking on a cloud. They're in heaven. They're, you know, anything that was a reference to clouds. Your cloud machine comes out. That's dry ice. That's carbon dioxide. And you're looking at, in terms of the chemistry, you're looking at sublimation, the move from a solid right to a gas, right to a vapor, bypassing the liquid stage. Yeah, two more. And what you see there is that carbon dioxide is heavier than air. Carbon dioxide will not float in the air for any period of time unless there's enough heat present in the system already, whereas the heat has to be there. Then it will float. As soon as it cools down, it precipitates out, as you see on the cloud there, in the fog machine, in the cloud machine. We have one left to go. Not bad. I said, we're doing consistent runs. We're close to the 500 mark in terms of being a consistent runs there. Let's drop the volume here for our ad, because unfortunately we can't take the ads out when we're doing live streaming. So we just drop the volume. We could sort of see the ad visually, um, and then go from there. Uh, So what happens is the carbon dioxide is not a actual greenhouse gas. The heat has to already be there. So if you actually want to, you're really interested in, if you're really interested in what's going on with the climate, the science there is not climate science, it's not meteorology, it's atmospheric physics. And what you're doing is you're looking at thermodynamics. You're looking at the flows of heat throughout the planet. That is how you determine global warming or global cooling, not the average temperature. You're looking at basically you're looking at the amount of joules. You're looking at the total energy within the system. In this case, you're looking at, for in terms of the energy we're looking at for heat. You're looking at thermodynamics. So that is the actual physics that you have to apply to the atmosphere to get atmospheric physics. And I've been doing that for a while. I've been doing that for more than 15 years. And sorry to say, in the thermodynamics, I do not see the so-called man-made climate change. I see climate shifts. This climate shift that I see is not based on something that man's done, but rather has to do with the rotation of different matter at different states. A solid will have a different rate of spin than a liquid will, and a liquid will have a different rate of spin than in angular momentum than would a gas. And in other words, so we know from if you study geology and you do a bit of work on the Earth's magnetosphere, and particularly you look at the unstableness of the magnetosphere, and understand that the core is liquid. This is where the magnetic fields come from. Yeah, and there we go. We've got our emblems. We got our circle. You know that the core of the Earth is liquid, and it has a different rate of spin than does the crust above. So it makes sense that when you're talking about the oceans and even the atmosphere, that the atmosphere is going to have a different rate of spin as compared to everything else. And that's what I found. I was able to observe it, that the Earth's atmosphere has a rotation and is different than the daily rotation uh, that we see on the crust. So that's what I see in terms of the observation. I'm using the GOES satellite to do this tracking. That was causing the shifts is the actual rotation of the atmosphere, not, and this brings us to the end here, not carbon dioxide. And there's our prize, 7 keys. And this brings us to the end of our daily run. And of course, we're going to come back in a few hours, probably around 10 o'clock. Well, yeah, no, it's Friday today, so it's actually Friday, so we're not going to come back at 10 o'clock. We're not going to be back until 1 o'clock in the morning. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be running the Wordy Weekend. So what's up next is the Wordy Weekend. And that's going to start at 1 o'clock sharp. And we're not going to do everything. We don't run the Wordy Weekend all at once, but we run it as we can. Typically about an hour at a time. The picture, with just by running alone, 247. So I might not even use the boosters. What I might end up doing is just running with Lauren. If this is what Lauren is producing on a consistent basis, then you simply you pop out of a wordy weekend for a bit to get to your top score, and this is the way you do it. So I might not. I'm planning on not using the boosters to get back into the top runs again for Sunday night. And as I said, I forgot that we were supposed to end this. And of course, I'm running another run without ending it. So after this run, this will be the last run, and we'll be heading into the wordy weekend. And we will continue our discussions, which, but as themselves, they're kind of ad hoc. They're off the top of my head. They're not planned. If you want to participate in the discussion more, go ahead, do so. Uh, there'll be opportunities for you to see more, do more. And so this is capping off our last run. This caps off the end of the daily mission. We got all the emblems. We got our keys for the daily for the hunt. The week. This is supposedly a weekly hunt, and we're moving into the wordy weekend marathon. So this wraps up the week on a sort of positive note. And that, but not bad. 680 coins, and we were at the 89 mark, 895, 892,000 mark. That's sufficiently a round number for me. So let's take the picture and end the game. See you in a couple hours.